hate when you like should know some fact and you just can't remember it. Like this happens to me all the time. Maybe I need to stop, you know, my recreational use of certain substances. Hello, welcome to Sound and Fury Book Reviews. As usual, I'm Tina. Today I'm doing a one-off book review of an older book, The Fear of Losing Eurydice by Julia de Campos. So this is a literary fiction from 1979 and the translation's from 1993. So this is going to be one of those reviews that is less of a review than like an extrapolation into the themes behind this book. I wasn't originally going to do a one-off review of this, but I had just read The Boneway as well, which is another Orpheus and Eurydice kind of retelling story. So I was like, why don't I just do a single review of this? Also, I really enjoyed this. There are spoilers in this review. I mean, there's not really a plot, so I'm not really spoiling too much, but this whole review is just spoilers because it's more of like a critical analysis. So if you're intending to read this, maybe you read it first. Anyway, so what is this book? Have you ever heard of it? Probably not. There are multiple stories within this novel. So there's the story of this guy named Mr. N, who is attempting to write a love story based on the theme of islands. He's sitting in a cafe writing all these things. That's basically his plot. He also goes mad at one point. There's the love story itself, the one that he's writing, and then there are random quotes about islands in the margins. There's also a first-person narrator who comes in and out near the end that kind of is its own story. Yeah, anyway. So these 4 points of view kind of interweave with one another in this elegiac and thematically resonant way that relies on allusion and metatextual elements that range from elegant in their application to a little bit overbearing. It's one of those books that you go into knowing that, you know, you're going to have to think about it. Like, if you look at I don't know if you can see this because the lighting in my house is terrible, but you can see like the actual prose, and there's a separate one, and then there's like little quotes, and like the whole thing is kind of like that. Like it doesn't read like a regular novel. I mean, it's not really a novel. So I'm going to get into the literary part of it in a bit, but in terms of character and plot, you know, there's not a lot. This novel isn't meant to provide you with any of this though, so I'm not rating it as I would like a regular novel or a regular piece of fiction, but I wanted to kind of get that out of the way. So for people who aren't sure what this is, you know, as I said, it's a literary fiction. It's meant to be challenging and confounding at times. It's an experiment. It's a meditation on not just love, but inspiration, I think, and how these two things work hand in hand to conflate and encourage one another. It's about imagination, I think, and how writers form ideas. One small scribble in the margins, you know, a sketch on a napkin, a list of thematically inspiring quotations, anything and everything can give rise to art. Love in the novel, I think, is both love as we know it, as the concept, but also the love of creation, of craft. It's the love that a writer has for writing, you know, as much as it can make us go, you know, crazy with longing, you know, keep us up at night, you know, makes us feel like something we know we have, this fantastic story is just out of reach, you know, as much as all of that happens, that it's about the love of that process. Of course, the title has relevance here. The story of Orpheus and Eurydice, you know, not just the story itself, but the concept of desire and possession and Eros and Thanatos being interlinked, you know, this runs throughout this novel as one would expect. I will say, in terms of readability, while I enjoy the rather confusing way the text interwove and spiraled around itself, a few times she listed off various items, peoples, and works that didn't do much for me, and it kind of took away from the otherwise lyrical prose. The middle of the novel dips kind of slightly in interest. I mean, it's a short little thing, but kind of halfway through I was like, all right, I kind of understand what you're doing here, move it along. So onwards to the good stuff. I'm basically just gonna list off a bunch of quotes from the book and talk about them and talk about why I like them. So if that's not your thing, just stop now. But this book has lots of lovely kind of quotations. So I found out, based on this book, why I love Minotaurs so much. I mentioned this in one of my tags or list videos or whatever, not like I expect you to watch everything that I post, but I absolutely love Minotaurs. I don't know why, like I love the concept of Minotaurs, and I think this book kind of explained to me why. So here's this quote from it. Crete, an island that encloses a labyrinth, that encloses a bull that is Poseidon, that is the symbol of the ocean, that is a metaphor for time, that leads human beings to an inexorable death. I mean, not the death part, but I love the ocean. To get into the more lofty part of the quote, I never thought of the Minotaur as being a symbol of anything other than shame and deception, you know, given its conception in the original myth. And death, obviously, because the young people in the labyrinth, are supposedly killed by the Minotaur. But I wonder if maybe, they're actually killed by dehydration or starvation rather than being, killed by this creature. I just think that's an interesting concept. Time, starvation, dehydration, is actually what kills them, not the Minotaur. The Minotaur is like the looming threat of that. It's a representation of this. If we believe that people were actually sent into a labyrinth back in the, that time, the 300 BCE or whatever. Anyway, what am I talking about? Let's move on from the Minotaur. Let's leave the Minotaur alone. Another quote that I liked. He discovers something to add to his islandary, as if a direct wireless connection had been established between his modest person and that inaccessible place where there was an answer for every question. Obviously, she's talking about Yahoo Answers. Obviously. And now it's dead. It's dead. The Minotaur has killed it. No, I just think it's funny that a book from 1979 is like talking about Wi-Fi, which is kind of funny. Yeah, that wasn't a very literary quote, but I liked it. Another one. Olive Verne is the story of love, postponed to infinity, never told, as if that prolonging of expectation, that deferment of the tension of desire over an infinite span would generate the most incisive of enjoyments, that of anticipating the greatest rapture without succeeding in consummating it. This makes me want to read Jules Verne. I think I read one of his, Around the World in 80 Days when I was younger, but I don't remember it. And I have a couple other ones around here probably. I think they were my dad's. So I really liked this quote because it kind of represented for me why I really love slow burn romances. If I could explain it, it would be using this quote, the prolonging of expectation, the deferment of tension of desire. I really love that concept, and this book just has so many of these little gems that I really enjoy. Every text is an island. Is it? When I first read this, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, I don't know. But then thinking about it, in two ways a book is an island. For the first, every book is a physically different thing than others in terms of, a library. If you think of shelves as an ocean, each book is an island in itself, a thing that you can visit. And then secondly, even if we use allusions and references in a novel, a piece of work is still its own entity. So even if you have books that are linked, even if you have a trilogy of books, those are still separate books. Those are still islands that you can take your little reading boat to. I just think that's I don't know. I love how when short little questions span kind of a lot of thought. And this book does that quite often. This is like the last line from the book. They are persistent, intense fervor of red roses. Another allusion, the death of Eurydice, but also the nightingale and the rose. That's so what was it? The nightingale. Oh my god, I can't even remember. Okay, so the nightingale and the rose is an Oscar Wilde short story. I'm trying to remember it. I read it a long time ago. It follows this nightingale as she struggles to find a red rose for the student who wants to use it to ask a girl that he likes to dance with him. The nightingale is flying around looking for these red roses. But from what I remember, the nightingale, to get a red rose, sacrifices itself and bleeds all over a white rose, and that makes it red. I think, am I conflating this with a different myth? I might be. But anyway, this quote reminded me of that. Because red roses are symbolic of death as well as love, Eros and Thanatos, again, to wrap it all up. Anyway, here's another one. This one I just love. He wrote a poem which he then forgot because the words, pursuing the leaves, simply scattered. A poem of augury, of desires, of catastrophes, storms and shipwrecks, of nights and islands. All those things that I love. It's another nice quote. They will discover by watching the black sky that the sweetened alcohol is infinitely gently nauseating, and that the moon, sliding like an ancient parchment across the endless hollow of the night, is another island. I guess planets are islands. That's kind of cool, actually. Or are islands planets? The big questions. There's another one. The slow, secret slide of the afternoon into night. The furtive, voracious, and aggressive tenderness. The loneliness mutually respected. The ephemeral eternities. The distant fusions. The effusive boredom. The impatient surroundings. This, for some reason, reminded me of Lorca. The Public, which is a play that I read in university, and I very much enjoyed because it was kind of like that. The whole thing is very confusing, and I very much enjoyed it. But yeah, if you ever want to read a really weird play, check out The Public by Lorca. So that was kind of it, but one shout out to the mention of Piranesi, whom I learned about early this year when I read the book Piranesi. Funny how these things happen sometimes, but I think it's more like you pick up on things that you've recently learned more than a coincidence. That's what I think. It's like when you buy a car and all of a sudden everyone else is driving the same car. I think just you notice it more, right? Anyway, that is my review of The Fear of Losing Eurydice. And I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if you'll ever read it. I think the cover is absolutely terrible. The cover sucks. I just, maybe because I don't like ballet, if I had to pick one thing to never ever watch again, that would be ballet. I'm not fond of ballet. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of that. If you didn't, that's cool. That's cool. Minotaurs!